Perth, hello.
Hello, Sydney.
Sydney, hello.
Gosh, LA everywhere.
I'm getting lots and lots of international excitement.
Yes, and thanks for everyone reminding me to record.
Excellent.
So, guys, Marooned, yeah?
Yeah, here we are. And we didn't really talk. This is show 2 of series 3, and we didn't talk very much last week at the start of it about the changes that were wrought for season 3, because obviously we talked about the Captain Emerald suit and all the cosmetic stuff, but the really significant thing in season 3 was Starbug, and this whole thing came about by we visited Pete Ragg and the boys and gals at the BBC special effects department and got them. I didn't like Blue Midget at all, and we got them to design a new spacecraft, and Starbug just came off the drawing page, and it made such a difference to us as writers, because we could get off the ship. Red Dwarf was so huge, you couldn't get involved in a high-speed chase or a crash and do this. And so kind of this episode originated from the special effects department, and we went round to see them every year. Before that was the first thing we did, and we talked about what they could do and what they hated doing. They hated doing water shots because a water droplet is a minimum size, and when you're doing with miniatures, you can't get convincing water.
Oh, that's fascinating. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
and so we said, well, what is it you do that's convincing? And they said, oh, we can do snow. And so basically, we started with the snow. That's where Maroon came from.
Yeah.
Rob, just on that, and I don't know if you want to go into it now, but after we finished last week, you told me the origins of Backward, which I thought was fascinating, but you didn't do it on the broadcast. So.
Oh yeah, no, that was weird as well. After season 2, and we'd finished the novel, we were on a Ross and Rachel break, basically, working on our own things, and I worked on a book. There was sort of a hardcore science fiction book called The Backwards War, and it was sort of high tech. There were gravity weapons and different time things on the battlefield. And it transpired that the Earth was pitted against an enemy who was moving backwards through time. And the big scare then is, why would somebody be involved in a war they know they'd already lost? And it was kind of, that's what it wasn't funny. It was sort of hardcore science fiction. And when we came back together to write this series, I thought, actually, that would be a good starting point for a plot for Red Dwarf, and that's where Backwards came from, the Backwards War.
I've got to say, looking at these first 3 episodes, of course, it's Polymorph coming up next week. I mean, this is a different show from the first 2 series. I think this is the series where we move, and you guys particularly move into really just very, very high-class storytelling, production values. And I think it's an outrage that, quite honestly, with those first 3 episodes, it wasn't even nominated for a BAFTA. Never mind, should have won it. It really, I mean, talk about 1, 2, 3. Those first 3 episodes, extraordinary achievement on weekly turnaround on a BBC budget. Was the budget much bigger, Ed, for 3 than 1 and 2?
A little bit, principally because of the opportunity to do a bit more exterior shooting, to be honest with you. And we did take advantage of that. So, for instance, the snow scenes in this sequence are actually on location. Well, I said on location, they're actually in a studio in Liverpool. So we went into Manchester studios for that.
Did you need a sound stage and green screen and all that?
And of course, if you've got time on location, it gives you more time to be more adventurous in the studio. I think particularly with shows like Polymorph. So that allowed us to be more adventurous, because we still had 2 days in studio and we had some filming time as well. So
and I suppose as well, we'd sort of started building up a catalogue of model shots, so we could do more with the new budget. We could add to that catalogue. Although you notice in this show there are a couple of repeats from last week's. But hey, what the hell?
Lucy says she keeps freezing. Are any of the rest of you having trouble? Lucy's internet keeps freezing up. I hope it's not a genuine, not a
general thing.
Okay, so guys, it's Marooned. Shall we? I've got to get up and go and press my start button.
Okay, well, I will count you in, Paul. I love it when Paul disappears into that strange globby mist. Okay, and we are pressing play in 3, 2, 1, play. I've only got a blank screen. Oh, it's Starfield.
You're on Starfield. Amazon Prime being very, very slow. Come on.
No, I'm on the Blu-ray.
Mine's not playing at all. I'll catch you up.
Yours, mine, Ed, don't worry.
Are you off the titles yet?
No, we're still on the titles.
Start again, Rob.
I'll tell you when we're out of them. Still there.
Still on titles.
And that's the logo.
That's the logo there. Okay.
That's written by that genius and the other guy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we're into the drill gag. One of my favourite gags, the drill. This is not a drill. This is a drill.
Yeah, I love that. Do you remember in what order we recorded them? Was this the first one we recorded in the studio?
I don't think so, for two reasons. One is that I would be surprised if it was, because we got a little bit adventurous with this episode. And look out, spoiler alert, when the Starbug is on the planet, I decided to shoot it all handheld to try and make it all more claustrophobic. It's the first time I ever shot a multi-camera studio show handheld. They normally have gas.
And it wasn't fashionable then. It wasn't everybody was doing it.
No, it was just to try and make it all closed in. And of course, it gave the cameraman a chance to get in much closer than they normally would and have more freedom in terms
Well, according to Mr. Slingsby, this was Robert's first scene in front of the audience.
Oh, in that case, maybe it was.
I mean, it would have been shot first, yeah?
Yeah, I had a feeling it was.
So I was just very adventurous off the bat. Haha, good for me.
Well, no, I think
handheld shots could come in and get much closer, featuring at one stage when, it's another spoiler alert, when Craig eats the dog food, the camera actually hit the spoon that he was to try and get in to see how disgusting it all is. So yeah, it was a great episode. So initially, these camera shots are pretty standard because we're still.
Yeah, and I think probably the decision was taken because we had Robert and Hattie as newbies.
Yeah.
And this show didn't really involve them too much.
So it eased them in a bit.
It eased them in a bit, I think that's it.
Yeah.
I've got to come back to Graham.
Yeah, what's doing with that blue screen, honestly?
Well, this show does feature a couple of dodgy green screen shots, and I'm very sorry about that. That was supposed to be the inside of the hangar, the best we could do.
Ed, I do remember we paid for a whole bloody specialist green screen studio in Liverpool, and that's what you came back with. I mean, it was touch and go for a few minutes.
I have to tell you, that was shot in Manchester, and we forgot to put the green screen up, and it was just a black cloth.
Somebody says there's a bit of a Godot feel about this app.
Yeah, for sure.
It is weak. I think it's more weak low. I think it's more hell is other people, isn't it? It's...
Yeah, I agree. It's basically the Quiet Night In episode where I like, from Porridge, the big one, and the lift is contained, and it's always good to get to do one of those.
Was that as you say, the starting point was VisFX, Rob? But did you see that possibility of locking this? It's the first time I think really the two of them really interact in depth as characters.
Yeah, well, the first two seasons they were kind of doing it anyway, weren't they? The cat was only peripherally involved, really. And now they're up and running a bit. We did it every year. I'm always wanting to do every season to do a lockdown ep because it helps you burrow into the characters.
Yes, absolutely.
And once you've got them up and running, you start writing a character. This is for people who are writing out.
Like saying the Sunday afternoon episode in Hancock as well is probably the first famous example.
Yeah, all that Hancock alone stuff.
It's also what I also love about the structure of this episode. There was an American sitcom writer, and I never remember his name, but he was asked about structure in sitcoms, and he was talking about the American 5-act sitcom, TV sitcom, and he said it's very simple. In the first act, the cat runs up the tree. The middle acts, all the characters react in the way you'd expect those characters to react to the problem, and in the last act, the cat just comes down of his own accord. And you know, in a way, that is. I remember Lisa and Rick wrote one of the episodes of Young Ones, one called Oil, specifically on that basis. You know, they discover oil, they all do their different thing. There is no oil,
Yeah.
and this is one of the clearest examples of you guys doing it on Dwarf, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the relationship between the two of them just gets better and better as it goes.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was going to say for writers who are listening, this is what happens. You get the spine of the character, so it's a logical process from there on to flesh them out more and more. And you say, okay, so what kind of things would he like? You know, how did he get to this point? And it's like a detective story more than an invention at that point. And you think, oh yes, of course he likes toy fucking soldiers. You know, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm getting rid of that background. It's annoying me. Now,
Yeah, great.
I've got a little quibble here, Rob, really, and Ed. For the first time ever, I watched this the other day. I'm actually having a bit of difficulty following the plot here because, and I almost think there's a scene missing because we see the problem set up. We see them all preparing to get off the ship. Then, for no reason that's been stated, we see two vehicles leaving the mothership. We see Starbug and followed by Blue Midget. But nobody's told us that two are on one ship and two's on the other. Then the ship crashes, and it's only then we realise that Rimmer and Lister are not with Crichton and Cat. And then they suddenly turn up. Is there something missing in there somewhere?
A couple of lines.
Well, it feels like it.
Wasn't there a scene where the Cat was driving Crichton in the snow on a sledge, yelling mush?
Yes, that's later on.
Is that in this?
It is here, but we had so much chroma key problems that I had to tighten up the shot.
I know, it wasn't a great shot.
It was terrible because Crichton was pulling him on the sled, but the sled just wouldn't key. We just couldn't make it work. And it's so annoying because now, you know, you could rotoscope it, you could do all sorts of things. But then it was just untransmittable. So we had to tighten the shot up. And he does say mush, but he says it off camera. It's really, really dodgy old shot. This sequence I much prefer where the giant fireball hits Starbug. That I particularly like.
Yes. Robert's asking, talking about structure, did you write to a 3-act structure? I think one of the joys of particularly BBC English comedy is you don't have to write to an act structure at all. You completely write the half hour as a flowing piece, yeah?
I never thought about it as having a first, second and third act. I was aware of that. We went on various courses. And it's just, you know, that's how a story gets told. You don't have to think about it. There is a twist. You enjoy the twist, and then you resolve it. It's really.
So the sequence with Craig falling out of the, he does his own stunts again, falling out of Starbug into the snow. This, as I say, was shot in a studio in Liverpool. He's been pulled along the ground by a wire, which we removed later. But the wind is being created by these artificial snow being fired into his face no less than by a Volkswagen engine. Propeller attached to it. Volkswagen Beetle's engine with a propeller attached, that's what's blowing into his face.
Did everybody see that giant glacier on the left of that shot wobbling? Oh, it's quite good.
So the planet's surface, Ed, was built in a studio in Liverpool, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, obviously, the Starbug shots of the snow are
model effects.
You know, built into the model shot, and there's a couple of stock shots there which I got off the BBC Natural History of the Arctic.
How did you get the fireball effect, Ed?
Fireball effect was yes, I remember this. It's a trick that works quite well. You put on you basically have a soaking ball of flames, which is something flammable, and you run it on a wire. So the camera's this end, the wire's this end, you run it towards the camera, it just comes in. And you run and then put it into slow-mo and key it. Apart from that, nothing. And they're better shot on black, everybody, if you're shooting fire. Better to shoot it on black than green, because you can key it better.
Yeah.
If you're in that situation. Always try and shoot them against black.
So a throwaway Ed question here. Why is there that tombstone drop, which is actually from series 2, when you've got so much quality in series 3? Why is there a series 2 shot in the opening titles?
Well, oh, in the opening titles?
Yeah.
Because I sort of came up with the
like
idea of those opening titles before we shot this series.
Okay.
I had to nick some stuff.
Okay.
And I couldn't find a good enough shot to replace it, basically. But you're right. It should have all been contemporary stuff.
It just strikes you when you see it. You think, oh, hang on, that's not from the series.
Yeah, I know. Error. Thank you.
Do you remember it? Were we? Because I was well in the background by this time. Did we still make them do speed runs? Because that dialogue between Chris and Craig must have been a hell of a thing on the speed run. They must have been killing each other.
Yeah.
I love this Mayday shtick.
Yeah, Ascension Sunday. The thing with this was, because it was principally the whole episode was the two of them. Funny enough, in rehearsals, we could focus more on the two of them. So you sort of go, thanks, Robert, thanks, Danny, you can go now, because you top and tail this, and thanks, Hattie. And then, boys, okay, let's sit down and really focus on this. So in that respect, because it was less of it was just a two-hander, it was easier for them to really focus on it. And yeah, they did do speed runs though, and they were a bitch.
They were a bit. When on speed runs is one thing when it's 4 of you playing ping pong, but the 2 of them like that's a hard one.
They are so on it though, aren't they? I mean, these performances again are just great. They're just great.
James is saying I stepped back and Rob and Doug became more producers, and I think that's right. And in fact, the credit you, all 3 of you, with Ed, and there's you as producers, and I think that is right. By this time I was doing other things, and I really only used to drop in on rehearsal and recording, I think.
The thing is, you guys were really good in that you let writers actually into the fucking rehearsals. Most people didn't.
Encouraged you, paid you to come to the rehearsals eventually.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's what was worse was if you couldn't make rehearsals for one reason, I'd rehearse something, then you'd come in and go, oh. You go, oh Christ, where were you?
But the problem is, of course, traditionally in television, nobody listens to the writers, none of the crew. Now, we had the ear of the special effects guys and the lighting guy, John Pomfrey. Paul
and Mel Bibby.
Yeah, well, later now, because we're producers, we did, but then we were writers, and you just go up to someone and say, do you think we could get, a blue chair for this thing? And say, yeah, no problem, just ignore you.
Yeah. I have to say, it still happens today. I was recently filming, and a comedy actress called Annette Crosby was working with us, and the writer came up and started explaining things, and she just looked at him blankly, and then he went off, and I said, she said, who's that? I said, that's the writer. He said, could you ask him not to talk to me?
Well, listen, a lot of actors don't like the writer coming out. It goes through the director, which, in some ways is a decent professional courtesy.
Depends on the relationship with the director and the writer, let's be honest.
That's the thing. I do think you've got to have some sort of discipline on the floor. You can't just have people going up to people saying, why don't you do this? Because the trouble is then not everybody knows. And
yeah, whereas if it's channeled through one person, it does.
There has to be one person, and that person's the director because he's sitting in the chair. Why was Rocky called Rocky? Do you know? I can't remember. What was his actual name, Ed?
Oh, yes, because he was called Rocket because he was shooting a fireworks display and they had this big fuck off final rocket, and it was his job as a young trainee to follow it. And he went the other way. The rocket.
And that's why he was called Rocket. I never knew that story.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I had a friend in OBs who was always doing those big outside displays. And I was floor managing for him one time, and I couldn't understand why he wasn't bothering with rehearsing the fireworks. I said to him, Rick, Rick Gardner's name was, are you okay with the display? You haven't given camera angles. He said, don't worry about it, Paul, don't worry about it. When it came to the night, he had a videotape. He said, Paul, you cannot get fireworks right. He said, I spent a long time clipping together a videotape of a perfect fireworks display. I give it to the VT guy, and when we go to fireworks, he plays it. I don't even bother trying. On a live event, he used to play the Rick Gardner cut of a fireworks.
Of fireworks. And you go, this year is very, very similar to last year.
It looks very similar to last year. Maybe you put a few extra cuts in.
There have been questions about the whether we get away with this these days.
The virginity story. I must admit, it was interesting watching it yesterday because I pride myself on not being influenced by the sort of modern views about what you can and can't say. But I must admit, I thought, oh, we're quite close to the knuckle here, aren't we? Did we feel that at the time?
No.
I thought that the too badly parked Volkswagens line was offensive, frankly.
That's because I knew he was going ahead.
I thought it was a very funny scene. It's a fantastic character scene, isn't it? Telling us that.
Also, everybody.
Can I ask where you got a name like Porky Robot, Rob? Where did the name Porky Robot?
That's from our school.
Was it a real name?
What's the name called Porky Robot?
It was Stanley Robot.
Porky, are you watching?
It was called what, Rob?
He wasn't even fat, but Porky sounded funnier. No, I was going to say, I'm coming out. I actually lost my virginity on the golf course.
Rob?
On the green, though, not in a bunker. I'm not an idiot.
Yeah.
That's where that came from.
That is,
right, there is a
have you ever told that story before, Rob? That's brilliant.
No, I've never told that before. So that's why I love you didn't even pay any green fees. Because that was going through my mind.
He's Rimmer's
Were
reaction.
you 12, Rob?
Rimmer's reaction. Were you 12, Rob, at the time?
No, I wasn't.
Rimmer's reaction to that whole golf story is just brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
Has all the wrong problems. He has every wrong problem to
You
worry.
weren't even a member.
Ask him if he combed over the sand after he left. Right, well, it's good to know, everybody. You learn something every week. Today's scoop was Rob Grant lost his virginity at a golf course. Can we have the name?
On
of
the
it?
green of which golf course, Rob?
Can we
you
have
say
the golf course name so we can put a plaque up there?
I think it was Swinton Golf Course.
Well, I think they should have a plaque up. Yes, I think somebody should drop the secretary a note and get a blue plaque on the wall.
It should be on the flag on the green.
I'm trying to apply for membership, guys. Come on.
That will get you in. That will get you a shortcut, mate.
I'd completely forgotten until I saw this. I thought, oh my God, that's running close to the line, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a lovely scene, and I'm absolutely glad that we did do it. I just think nowadays, well, I tell you, I almost guarantee you, Ed, you're more active than me nowadays. That would have gone through a whole bloody debate with about 18 people, wouldn't it?
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay.
No, there's a department now called compliance.
Yeah.
And you have to go through all their stuff beforehand, and then they tell you what you can and can't do, and even how to shoot it. And then
This is the
You
thing.
don't even know how to shoot it, Ed.
they make you cut it.
We're not saying it's okay to have sex when you're 12. We're just saying some people do, and that's true.
And you could put that argument now, but my reckoning is you wouldn't be able to shoot that scene now.
No, it would be changed. Now, so you can see with the handheld, this is a really good example. As he creeps in, how we can keep Chris and Craig in the background. You can't do that normally on a regular TV ped. He's opened up the lens and slightly distorted to try and make the dog food look more disgusting. See,
And it worked.
in the side-on shot, but when it's the head-on shot, when you come back to it in a minute after it looks grotesque. And so I think we got so close. You see Craig's knuckle there is literally millimeters away from the lens of the camera. And I think we hit him.
You're right. Somebody was saying just now, you need the shock of the slightly uncomfortable feeling about them talking about their virginity to get the gag. And I mean, that's just denying writers one of the basics of comedy, which is build up the embarrassment, if you like, or the slight tension, and then the laugh gets even stronger. And I mean, not allowing people to do it is just insane.
If you're all you're allowed to talk about is trivial, ordinary stuff, then
Well, there's no comedy anymore.
Do you think we get away with eating the dog food, or would that be considered promoting bad?
Well, do you know what?
eating habits?
I can't even tell you nowadays what will be considered allowed and not allowed, but somebody will
I'll tell you
complain.
something. Somebody's asking questions about Lolita. Nobody would publish Lolita today.
No, probably not.
Published? You think not? Published? No, you're right. You're absolutely right, Rob. I'm just thinking about it. No, you're right. And if they tried to, they'd have a riot on their hands from the half their writers leaving the publisher, as we've just seen recently. Ed's disappeared. Oh no, he's just
Sorry.
something. Oh, he's getting some water. Craig apparently said it was tuna that he was eating. Doesn't look very like tuna, does it?
Yeah, it was a mixture of tuna and some sort of, I think it was sort of like,
Gelatin of some kind.
It was jelly on there.
It wasn't nice anyway. I mean, you might as well have eaten the dog food. We did. So this is very good.
Oh, where's somebody saying they ate both cat food and dog food when they were young, sort of experimentally, and I think everyone's kind of tasted it, haven't they? Kind of.
Simon, if you're looking to read Lolita to see why it wouldn't be published now, you're going to be disappointed. It's actually an incredibly long and slightly turgid book. But
Oh no, one of my favourite books. He's a great writer.
he's a great writer, but Lolita's a tough read, Rob, don't you think?
God, it's only because you're trying to get over the top of your erection all the time.
Watch the film. Watch the film with James Mason.
But the subject matter, I think you're right. I don't think a publisher would take it at the moment.
Right, so the guitar thing. So this really this is the turning point here.
I love this whole
An authentic Les Paul copy.
the whole trope. It's just.
Well, I completely forgotten the sort of ins and outs of the whole thing. I thought it was really quite clever that he wants to burn Rimmer's toy soldiers, and then when it comes to his guitar.
Yes. Yeah. But he's then so out of order. He knows how important that trunk is to Rimmer, and yet he does it. And then, of course, just brilliant to watch his complete embarrassment when he's rumbled. It really, I mean, the character
played that very well. We didn't rehearse it that much, as I recall, but he played taking it out of the thing and just going, "Excuse me."
Yes, at the very end, where he just
looking absolutely shamefaced. He did it brilliantly.
He did it brilliantly. The ending you're talking when he comes back
and Chris's reaction as well.
No, I think this is a real growing up episode for Chris and Craig. I mean, it's some of the best work we've seen from them so far, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm trying to work out if I'm still handheld here. I think I am.
Well, and Alan Ronald, this is a true thing. We were talking about this only the other day, Paul and I. Shakespeare is slowly becoming unperformable.
Well, you can't do Merchant anymore. You can't do Telling the True anymore, for sure. And I'm sure there are plenty of others that, I mean, they just don't get...
There's something else. I don't think you'd be able to use this song either. She's Out of My Life.
Yeah, no, I was surprised. How come we're allowed to?
Yeah, I know. I'm surprised by that too. I think maybe we just didn't ask.
Well, we didn't have to in those days, Ed. It was on my head.
Yeah.
We used to have a very good system at the BBC.
The background was a documentary. This was credit to Craig for being able to do this kind of tell the story. This is a difficult. I know he does lots of things, but it's an awkward and difficult thing to do. That's more David Attenborough there, and then bashing out the guitar. He did good work here.
Yeah, I remember I was terrified when he tried to snap the guitar over his knee. I thought, no, he's going to injure him. Look at that.
Well, my thought was, this is hard jade wood. There is no way that would. And of course, you very cleverly don't explain how he manages to cut out the jigsaw, which he hasn't got.
Yeah. Well, Rimmer was going for a very long walk.
Well, it obviously was a very, very long walk.
Very, very long walk. He walked around the entire planet. He's back now.
He was giving the man his space.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of it.
A loved one.
To sing She's Out of My Life. Yeah, so this, of course, where it swings around the other way, and Rimmer goes from one extreme to the other, which I love. It becomes a sort of moralizing. I never realised what a great, great guy you were.
Yeah, I mean, it is brilliant that Rimmer suddenly has this paean of praise, and which you totally unexpected, and Lister has to sit there and listen to it, knowing it's all.
I missed who said it, but somebody said he probably didn't break copyright that song because he sounded nothing fucking.
Thanks so badly.
Yeah, very good. It's a parody. Rimmer's Head is an H jazzle. Yeah, I think this was a new H we had this series where
it's more sparkly.
The foam stuck on one.
Yes, it's slightly more subtle. I was very pleased.
I think that was down to. I think that was down to costumes decision. I think it was.
Yeah, I think it would be Howard. It was all part of the look.
Decision is very good. Yeah.
So, because we should get Howard in on this series at some point. It'd be brilliant.
Well, he was so good, wasn't he?
Howard came and brought us the whole new look, as well as Mel Bibby bringing us the new interior.
Well, Howard talked about that on the show we did with him, actually, how he changed everything up on Series 3, didn't he?
Yeah. And it makes a huge difference. You can see that the whole thing reeks of class now. And you kind of almost believe you're in a spaceship, almost. With chains and bits and pieces hanging
Well,
around.
one thing I was going to say was it's a bizarre thing because this is a claustrophobic episode, but the whole notion of getting them into Starbug
So
gets rid of that
this is the
claustrophobia from
floor
the.
shot. I don't know if you
There
can
it
see,
is. There it was. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if you can see the shot now. That was originally a much wider shot of them on the sledge and Crichton pulling him, but I just couldn't get the shot to key. It was so annoying.
I mean, we must say these were reasonably early days of chroma key. I mean, it wasn't
Yeah.
that good of a device.
No, it was very wobbly, and it was very difficult to put in afterwards. So
Very,
if you
almost
do it in the
impossible.
studio on a
Almost
green
impossible.
screen, you can get away with it. But in the edit, trying to key stuff in, and if the key wasn't perfect, it just wouldn't do it. And
I'm not sure where Jason Murray comes from, but he's saying he's regular guy a British compliment. I think it is, Jason. I'm not sure where you're from. But
It's American.
it's an Americanism, is it?
Yeah,
He kind of is. He's a regular guy.
yeah, yeah.
Marcia is asking, how can Rimmer smell anything? What's that, Rob? What's the answer to that?
Oh, well, you know, he can smell things. He smelled the moon boots in Crichton, didn't he? And
Yeah, we're asking you how.
well, it's digitized. The smell is digitized in this era.
Yeah.
He can do whatever you need him to do to advance the plot, I think, can't he?
Yeah, he has a data bank which is connected to his synapses, which opens up appropriately according to whatever his.
I mean, they actually do have rudimentary digital smells at the moment, I think. Ed is one.
Seriously?
Yeah, they're working,
I've heard of scratch and sniff.
they are working on it.
Now, I think in this shot with Holly, we got the Crichton's ring to give the expression to flash slightly, to pulse slightly, which is nice. I don't know if we ever did that again.
Paul, you're so right. The look on his display, that interplay between Lister and Rimmer as the guitar is revealed is just magic, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is it. We're coming for it now. Here it is. He's so hangdog when he comes in.
Man of honor. Yeah, it's that hangdog look.
And it's the slow dawning on Rimmer. He sort of thinks, wait a minute.
Just. And then you see, he does a quadruple take. Take one.
Molly says Rimmer and Lister were so close to becoming really good friends, and it is true. You just tempt us. If only things had just been a gnat's different, they could have really bonded and formed a unit. But of course, then there would have been no comedy. There would have been no show. That's the problem.
Yeah. This is the last shot of the day. I shot this in the studio live in front of the audience because I wanted to.
You had a special funny small
very
camera.
hard shot. Eh?
You had a funny small camera, didn't you, for it?
Yeah, it's a very hard shot to do because we had to put the ceiling in and everything else. But I just wanted to get that in front of the audience so we could get this line and the big laugh it gets off. It was a really tough shot to get.
It was a little. I mean, now you have them all over the place.
But for then, yes, it was. It was
a mini camera. We're not talking GoPro lipstick cameras. We're talking.
It was a pen camera, but I mean, a sort of giant pen.
Resolution.
Very tricky to get the shot, but I'm so glad we didn't manage to do it live because I just wanted to laugh.
Where was the camera head physically? Was it a cameraman standing holding it?
He was on the floor.
Lying on the floor.
Through the hole with the guitar shape to try and catch Rimmer the other side plus the ceiling. And it was really tough to get low enough to try and get the angle.
Because of course those shots are normally forbidden in sitcom because we never put you don't go to the expense of putting a ceiling on a composite sitcom set. Yeah. So presumably you built the ceiling for that shot, Ed. It wouldn't have been there normally, would it?
Yeah, we manoeuvred it in.
Good old Mel. So sad to have lost him.
There we go. Good app, gang. A really good app. One of my favourites, that one.
Yeah, it's a really good.
It's a hell of an episode to follow on after backward. I mean, you're on form, boys. It has to be said.
Well, yeah, somebody's saying we're crashing a lot of Starbucks, and we did. I think that, but I think that was it, wasn't it? I think they crash again in Terraform.
Yeah, there's no crash. Don't we do crash into water?
Oh, Dimension Jump. They kind of crash, but they recover, don't they? Yeah. Body swap. Yeah.
Crash into water at one stage, didn't we? I think we were using the Pinewood Lake, which is enormous, and we were shooting with a model this big.
How many Starbugs are on the Dwarf? Rob, is there a whole fleet of them ready for?
There must have been, mustn't there? Everyone's just pointing out how many times it crashed. I don't know that it crashed unrecoverably all those times, but
yeah. I mean, we did use it. There was at one stage we did know that James Cameron had taken a shot in Alien, where the alien attacks the girl in the Nostromo sort of subship, whatever that is, and he threw, and they say it's in anger, but I'm sure it wasn't. He threw the model onto the model set, and it smashed and crashed into the camera. And they all went, "That's fantastic!" So I remember once with me and Pete, we said, "Should we just try chucking it and see what happens?" So we threw it, and it was completely crap. It sort of flew over a couple of times, landed on its back, and it really wasn't very good. So
I think probably James Cameron had a slightly bigger and more expensive throwing arena.
he was just angrier, you know.
Yeah, I think there's a fleet of blue midgets and starbugs that they use as they need them.
And I think also Pete Ragg, but also credit goes to for some of these model shots, or some of the other VisFX designers. I'm trying to remember the name now. It'll come to me, but there were a variety of people who put these model shots together for us.
You're right. James Cameron had a better throwing arm. I think Ed was the man.
Yeah.
Mike Tucker, yeah.
Jim Francis,
Jim Francis, that's right.
Also shot some fine model shots for us as well.
Yeah, I've forgotten Jim, yeah.
Okay, chaps. Well, next week, Polymorph.
Polymorph.
What a run of shows this is.
Polymorph. Whoa, this is I'd like to call it our epic episode, Polymorph.
God, you call that the epic episode after the two we've already just watched? Is quite something.
But it's just mind-boggling.
So, Polymorph next week. Hope a few of you at least can join us tonight at 7 o'clock for Private Lives, which I say, if you can, is honestly an absolute treat.
Yeah, it is. Go to rtflockdown.com. We sat through 2 rehearsals, so they're an amazing cast.
They're an amazing cast.
We're doing an amazing
right.
Amelia Clark, for all these who don't know, is not only the mother of dragons, but also Sarah Connor. She's two icons.
Sarah Connor. And she was the lead in You Before Me as well, that movie, wasn't she? I mean, she's a very considerate... But, you know, a lot of actors can be very good actors, but actually not get comedy. And when I heard she was going to be Sybil, I thought, great, you know, but I wonder what she'll be like on the comedy. She absolutely... You're looking at 4 actors who just completely understand what they're doing. So not to oversell it, but it's been a joy.
No, she's been brilliant. She's got some YouTube videos which are worth watching. Her touring around the set.
My estimate. I
mean, stop doing this. They don't want you to do this anymore. She'd be brilliant.
I'm not a Game of Thrones stalwart, but she's gone up in my estimation. She's a very, very fine actress, and all 4 of them hold their own in a very starry ensemble. So we've got to go away and do a bit of prep for that. So I think we're closing out now, guys. Polymorph next week. See you at 2 o'clock. And
we're off.
See some of you tonight.
All right. Enjoy the sunshine if in the UK.
I'll see you in a minute, Rob, yeah?